Hey everyone, it's Jane. I'm here tonight to do a review of Carpentaria by Alexis Wright. This is an amazing novel. I just finished reading it this morning. Carpentaria was published in 2006, and in 2007 it won the Miles Franklin, which is Australia's biggest literary award. Alexis Wright is an Aboriginal woman from the Gulf of Carpentaria. This novel is set in her home country. The story centres on a small town on the coast of far northwest Queensland called Desperance, which is not a real place. And it centres on the Phantom family, who are part of the West Side Pricklebush mob, who are the Aboriginal people who live on the fringes of Desperance. Uptown Desperance, where the white folk live, is pretty much encircled in this story by Aboriginal people. The West Side mob, who are connected to the traditional owners of the area. Norm Phantom is the reluctant leader, I guess, of the tribe. And then there's also the East Side mob, who have split off and moved across town. There are layers of versions of the reasons behind that. But needless to say, there's bad blood between East Side and West Side, and brawling in the street kind of bad blood at times. The leader of the East Side mob is Joseph Midnight, and Joseph Midnight and Norm Phantom are kind of each other's nemesis in a way in the story. So most of the story is centered on Norm and his wife Angel and their kids. There are 4 sons and 3 daughters. At the opening of the story, they're young or not yet born, but for the majority of the story, they're adults. You can tell from that the story actually spans quite a length of time. For the first half, the book actually moves around quite a lot, and you get a range of different characters introduced and different concerns. You get chapters that are really about Uptown. By the halfway point, things have focused down much more on the Phantoms, and in particular on Norm and his estranged son Will. Reading this book is quite an experience. Alexis Wright has made some really interesting structural choices about the way she set up her story. It has a kind of, I thought, almost a hypnotic quality. It took me about 4 times longer, I calculated, to read this book than I would expect to spend on a book of this length. It is a substantial book, but I had to read it really slowly. The way it's written demanded that of me. I was often rereading passages to make sure that I was understanding. Especially in the first half, I couldn't really read more than 1 chapter in a sitting, because the chapters, the first few at any rate, seemed to be self-contained stories. And by the time I'd read one, I needed some processing time before I was ready to move on to the next. So, to be clear, this is not a page-turner. She really has produced this amazing world. The Phantom family in particular are so lifelike. By the end, you really feel that you know them. Of course, there are universal concerns, but there are other concerns that the characters in this story have, which are quite particular and unique to themselves, and so probably should not be relatable in a sense, and yet it's so finely drawn that you almost feel as though you yourself share those concerns. I think you can tell that I'm struggling in a way to describe what it is about this book that is so amazing. I actually sat down and spent 2 hours immediately after finishing reading it, writing my review on Goodreads. So if you want something with a few less ums and ahs in it, maybe you should go and have a look at that. Some of the themes that's dealt with in the book are clearly issues about the relationship between Aboriginal people and the white Australians. There's also quite a lot about mining. A large mine not far from Desperance, which is the major employer in the town, and a lot of the conflict that the second half of the book is about is caught up with this mine. So there's issues about land rights and Aboriginal traditional ownership of the land. Although they propel the story, I don't actually think those issues are really the primary thing that's going on with the story. It's more about identity, Aboriginal identity, and continuity, seeking to maintain Aboriginal identity in the face of external pressures. I'm going to stop struggling to try. It's late and I'm tired, and this book really stretched me as a reader. There is humour in this book. There's a lot of humour in this book. Most of it is pretty black, but there's certainly laughs in this book. I certainly don't want to put anybody off reading it, but to be honest about it, it's a challenging read. Having said that, I'm absolutely thankful that I read it, and I'm actually really interested in reading her subsequent novel, which is called The Swan Book. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break and read something just a little bit lighter and fluffier for a chance to decompress my brain first. But The Swan Book looks absolutely fascinating. It's set in the future, where there is an Aboriginal Prime Minister of Australia, and my understanding is it has some science fiction elements in it, and that looks like, wow, that looks like one for me. So I'm going to have a crack at that, but that might not be until next year. So, Carpentaria by Alexis Wright. If anybody's read this, I would just love to hear what you thought of it. I am dying to find somebody who I can discuss this with. So please comment below if you've read this, and we can have a bit of a chinwag about it. Anyway, that's me for now, and I will talk to you later. Bye.